The Three Feathers. Once upon a time there was a king who had 3 sons, 2 of whom were bold and decided, but the third was a simpleton, and having nothing to say for himself was called Dummling. When the king became old and weak, and thought his end was approaching, he knew not which of his sons to appoint to succeed him. So he said to them, "Go out upon your travels, and whoever brings me back the finest carpet shall be king at my death." Then, to prevent their quarreling, he led them out before his castle, and blowing 3 feathers into the air, said, "As they fly, so shall you go." 1 feather flew towards the east, another towards the west, but the third went in a straight direction, and soon fell to the ground. So one brother went right, another left, laughing at poor Dummling, who had to remain where the third feather had fallen. Dummling sat himself down, and was sad at heart, but presently he remarked that near the feather was a trap door. He raised it, and finding steps descended below the ground. He came to another door, and knocking heard a voice singing, "Frog with the crooked leg, small and light green, see who 'tis that knocks, be quick, let him in." The door was open, and going in he saw a large frog, and round her were squatted several smaller ones. The big one asked what he desired, and he replied, "I seek the finest and most beautiful carpet." The big frog then called a young one, and said, "Bring me hither the great box." So the young frog fetched it, and the old one, opening it, took out and gave to Dummling a carpet more beautiful than anyone could make. Dummling thanked her for the gift, and came up the steps again. His 2 brothers, meanwhile, thinking their youngest brother so simple, believed that he would not bring home anything at all, and said to each other, "Let us take the best shawl we can from the back of some shepherd's wife." So they stole the first they met with, and carried it to the king. At the same time Dummling arrived, bringing his fine and beautiful carpet, and as soon as the king saw it, he was astonished, and said, "By right this kingdom belongs to the youngest of you." But the 2 others let the king have no peace, saying, "It is impossible that Dummling should have the kingdom, for he lacks common understanding." So the king then decreed that whoever brought him the most beautiful ring should be his heir, and taking the 3 brothers out, he blew as before 3 feathers into the air, for them to follow. The 2 eldest went east and west, but Dumbling's feather flew again as far as the trapdoor, and there settled down. He descended a second time to the fat old frog, and told her he needed the most beautiful ring in the world. The frog ordered her jewel casket to be brought, and gave him out of it a ring which sparkled with diamonds, and was finer than any goldsmith in the world could have made. The 2 eldest brothers gave themselves no further trouble than the beating of a nail, which they carried to the king, but as soon as Dummling displayed his gold ring, the father said, "The kingdom belongs to him." The 2 eldest brothers, however, would not let the king be at peace until he appointed a third condition, which was that whoever brought him the prettiest woman should have the kingdom. A third time he blew the feathers into the air, and they flew, as before, east and west, and one straight out. Now Dummling went again to the fat frog, and said, "I have to take home the most beautiful bride I can find." "Ah," said the frog, "the most beautiful bride, that is not easy for everyone, but you shall have her." And, so saying, she gave him a hollow carrot, to which 6 little mice were harnessed. Dummling asked sadly what he was to do with them, and the frog told him to place in the carriage one of her little handmaids. He took up 1 frog at random out of the circle, and placed her in the carrot, but no sooner was she seated than she became a beautiful maiden, and the carrot and the 6 mice were changed into a fine carriage and horses. Dummling kissed the maiden, and drove away from the place to the king's palace. His brothers came afterwards, having given themselves no trouble to find a pretty girl, but taken the first peasants they met. When the king had seen them all, he said, "At my death the kingdom belongs to my youngest son." But the 2 elder brothers again besieged the ears of the king with their cries, saying, "We cannot allow that Dummling should be king," and they requested that there should be a trial for the superiority, to see whose wife could best jump through a ring which hung in the hall. For they thought to themselves, "These peasant girls will be strong enough, but that tender thing will kill herself in the attempt." At last the king consented. The 2 peasant girls sprang easily through the ring, but they were so plump that they fell down and broke their arms and legs. Then the beautiful bride of Dummling sprang through as lightly and gracefully as a fawn, and all opposition was put an end to. So Dummling, after all, received the crown, and ruled a long time happily and wisely.